Late one night in a quiet observatory high in the mountains of Chile, a small group of scientists were monitoring radio signals from deep space. It was cold outside, the sky clear and filled with stars. Inside, the soft hum of computers and the faint crackle of static filled the air. These researchers had done this job for years, listening for anything unusual among the endless noise of the universe. Most nights were silent and uneventful, but this night was different. A young radio technician named Elena noticed something strange on her screen. At first it looked like random interference, just another burst of cosmic noise. But then she saw the pattern repeat. 3 pulses, a pause, 2 pulses, a longer pause. Then the same thing again. Her brow furrowed. It was too regular to be natural. She called over her supervisor, Dr. Morales, who adjusted the filters and replayed the signal. The same rhythmic pattern came through clearly, buried beneath waves of static. They exchanged glances, half excited, half afraid. They had heard many false alarms before, echoes from satellites, reflections from Earth's ionosphere, or even faulty equipment. But this one was coming from deep space, far beyond any human-made source. The signal appeared to be coming from a distant star system nearly 80 light-years away. For the next several hours, the small team worked in silence, their fingers flying across keyboards. They adjusted frequencies, filtered out background noise, and recorded every second of data. Elena's hands trembled as she watched the transmission continue, repeating the same strange pattern over and over. Finally, after hours of decoding attempts, something changed in the signal. It wasn't just pulses anymore, it was fragments of sound. Low, distorted tones, almost like a voice, but not human. By morning, the team was certain it was an artificial transmission. Someone or something was sending a message. Within hours, the data was sent to international research centers. Linguists, cryptographers, and astronomers across the world began working on it. News leaked online. Social media exploded with rumors. Aliens contacted Earth. Read one headline. Most people dismissed it as a hoax. But scientists knew it was real. For days, radio telescopes from Australia to Canada picked up the same signal, confirming its source. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a glitch. It was a message traveling through space for decades before reaching Earth. The signal, once cleaned and analyzed, revealed something heartbreaking. It wasn't a greeting or a threat, it was a cry for help. The alien message, when partially translated, contained universal patterns, coordinates, chemical structures, and a repeated sequence resembling distress codes. Somewhere far away, an intelligent species was dying, and they had sent their last hope to the stars. At first, most world governments tried to keep the information secret. Officials feared panic. They feared war. Some leaders argued that if an alien civilization was dying, it might be best not to interfere. "We don't even know who they are," one official said on a leaked recording. They could be dangerous, but secrecy never lasts long in the age of the internet. The story broke globally within a week. Videos appeared online claiming to have decoded parts of the message. News anchors struggled to explain what it meant. In cities all over the world, people gathered in parks staring at the sky, wondering who was out there, and what kind of suffering they were going through. Elena became an overnight celebrity. Reporters surrounded the observatory, begging for interviews. But she refused to speak publicly, still busy analyzing new data. To her, this wasn't about fame. It was about understanding. She felt a strange connection to the beings who had sent the signal. They were frightened, desperate, reaching out to anyone who might hear them. Across the world, debates erupted. Scientists wanted to respond immediately, to send a message of comfort or hope. Politicians argued about risk and cost. Religious groups declared it a sign from heaven. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was all part of a secret military plan. But beneath the chaos, one truth became clear. Humanity had received proof that it was not alone. A special meeting of the United Nations was called. Representatives from every major country gathered to discuss the situation. Some wanted to send a reply offering help. Others demanded silence, fearing it could expose Earth to danger. The arguments went on for days. Meanwhile, new parts of the alien transmission were decoded. The message contained data on biology, technology, and something that resembled a map of a solar system, scarred, broken, and dying. It showed images of cities destroyed, skies blackened, and oceans boiling. The aliens had been trying to describe a catastrophe, Possibly environmental, possibly war, maybe both. The more scientists learned, the more haunting it became. These weren't distant, unimaginable creatures. Their symbols suggested empathy, cooperation, even art. They had families, dreams, and fears just like humans. And now they were fading. In homes around the world, people sat glued to their screens, listening to the eerie hum of the alien transmission, replayed endlessly by news stations. It was a sound that stirred emotions no words could express. Children asked their parents if the aliens were okay. Some people cried, others prayed. Elena, exhausted but determined, stayed awake for 3 days straight. Her eyes burned from staring at the screens, but she couldn't stop. She felt responsible. They called for help, she whispered to herself one night, and we heard them. That thought alone gave her strength. When the signal finally stopped just like that, gone, the silence that followed felt unbearable. Humanity had lost contact. No more pulses, no more sound, just empty static. It was as if someone had been shouting from across the stars, and then their voice was gone forever. In that silence, the world changed. People realized how small and fragile life was, even across galaxies. For the first time, Earth's nations shared a common feeling, grief mixed with awe. Humanity had been chosen, or perhaps simply lucky, to hear that final message. Afterward, the debate grew fiercer. Should humans try to send help? Could they? The distance was unimaginable, but technology was advancing faster than ever. Scientists proposed unmanned probes, cryogenic ships, and even database transmissions that could reach the alien system in decades. Some said it was impossible. Others said it was destiny. Elena gave one quiet interview before returning to her work. Standing before cameras, she said in a calm voice, "We spend so much time fighting each other, but someone out there believed we would listen. They believed that somewhere in this dark universe there was kindness. I think we have to prove them right." Her words spread everywhere. They were quoted, shared, and painted on city walls. For many, they marked the beginning of something new, a sense that maybe humanity could rise above fear, if only for a moment. In classrooms, teachers told children about the cry from the stars. Artists painted it. Musicians turned the alien signal into haunting songs. Across the world, people began to look at the night sky differently, not as a cold void, but as a bridge between lives. Even though no one knew if the aliens were still alive, the message they sent had already changed humanity. People realized that survival wasn't just about strength or power. It was about connection, about refusing to ignore a cry for help, no matter where it came from. Weeks later, Elena returned to the observatory for one last night of listening. The mountains were quiet, the sky still. She put on her headphones expecting silence, but then for just a second she thought she heard something faint, a whisper of static that rose and fell like a heartbeat. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. She smiled softly and whispered into the dark, "We heard you." And far beyond Earth, across the endless black sea of space, the stars burned quietly, as if waiting for humanity's next move. The days after the alien signal stopped were filled with confusion, excitement, and fear. Around the world, people could not stop talking about it. In schools, in markets, on buses, and even in hospitals, everyone asked the same questions. Who sent the message? Are they still alive? Should humans respond? For the first time, the whole world was focused on one thing. It did not matter what country you were from or what language you spoke. Everyone was thinking about the same mysterious voice from the stars. But instead of bringing complete unity, the discovery created a storm of emotions. Some people were hopeful, others were scared, and some were angry. Humanity stood at a crossroads, and no one was sure which path to take. In big cities, people gathered in public squares to watch live news on giant screens. Leaders from many nations were giving speeches. Some of them said this was a sign that humanity must rise together and help the aliens. They said it was a moral duty. Others were more cautious. They asked, what if it was a trap? What if these aliens were not victims, but skilled tricksters trying to make humans feel sorry for them before launching an invasion? Videos on the internet started spreading rumors. Some claimed that secret governments already had contact with aliens. Others said that the message was fake, created to control people. The truth was lost in a sea of conspiracy theories. Meanwhile, at the United Nations, world leaders met in a large room filled with flags from every country. Cameras were banned. The doors were sealed. Inside, voices echoed through the hall as leaders argued passionately. One leader stood and said that humans had always helped those in danger, and to ignore the message would be against human nature. Another leader slammed his fist on the table and shouted that their country would not waste money helping mysterious beings light years away when their own people were hungry. They said the world had enough problems already. Why take responsibility for an alien civilization? Scientists like Elena and Dr. Morales were invited to explain what they knew. They described the message carefully, playing parts of the sound for leaders. The mournful tones echoed through the room. Some leaders wiped away tears, visibly moved. Others looked uncomfortable, unwilling to show emotion. Scientists explained that the message contained clear signs of suffering, chemical formulas that showed a dying atmosphere, images of ruined landscapes encoded in mathematical form, and repeated patterns that meant only one thing: help us. Outside the United Nations building, thousands of protesters gathered. Some held signs saying, "Help them." Others held signs saying, "Earth first." The protesters shouted at each other, but no one seemed to truly listen. Fear and hope wrestled in every heart. Media companies started inviting experts to speak on television shows. Some experts said that contacting aliens could bring new technology, longer lifespans, maybe even cures for diseases. Others warned that it could bring disaster. They said human history was full of times when stronger civilizations met weaker ones, and it always ended in pain. What if humans were the weaker ones this time? In the middle of all this chaos, something surprising happened. While governments argued, ordinary people began to act. In small towns and big cities, groups formed online. Engineers, doctors, teachers, mechanics, students. People from every background started talking about what they could do to help. They did not have rockets or space stations, but they had something powerful: determination. A small company in California posted a video online. The founder said, "If our leaders are afraid to act, then we will." Humanity didn't progress by waiting. We progressed by dreaming and building. Within hours, thousands of people donated money. Volunteers offered their skills. Other companies from India, Japan, Nigeria, Brazil, and many other countries joined the effort. Soon there was a growing movement, not led by any single person or government, but by humanity itself. At the same time, religious leaders around the world made public statements. One said, "If there are souls crying in the stars, then our duty is clear." Another said, "This is a test for humankind, a chance to show that compassion goes beyond Earth." However, some leaders warned that aliens might be demons or beings not made by God. These statements only increased confusion. Elena, tired but focused, was invited to speak in a global broadcast. She was not a politician, not a religious leader, just a scientist who had heard the call first. She stood in front of cameras, her hair tied back, her voice soft but strong. She said, "Maybe helping them is dangerous. Maybe we could lose everything. But maybe if we do nothing, we lose something greater: our humanity." Her words touched millions. People shared the video everywhere. It was translated into over 100 languages within hours. But not everyone was inspired. Some governments announced that they would not spend a single coin on an alien rescue mission. They claimed it was a distraction from Earth's real problems. They closed their borders tighter and increased military presence, fearing that other nations might use the situation to gain power or control resources. Other countries took a different path. They announced a historic alliance, not to fight each other, but to build something new. For the first time, scientists from rival nations sat together in labs and discussed plans for technologies that had only existed on paper. Words like faster-than-light travel, cryogenic preservation, and quantum navigation filled the air. Engineers built models of potential starships using recycled equipment. Hackers from different countries formed secret groups to share scientific data that governments tried to hide. Humanity was dividing, one half driven by fear, the other by hope. As days passed, tension grew. Stock markets around the world dropped. People began rushing to buy food and supplies, fearing war or collapse. In some cities, there were fights between those who wanted to send help to the stars and those who thought the signal would bring destruction. But at the same time, acts of kindness also increased. People donated money, offered free food to volunteers, and wrote letters to world leaders begging them to act with courage. One night, Elena received a private message from a scientist in Japan who had made a breakthrough. The scientist had decoded a new part of the alien message. It was not just a cry for help, it also contained instructions. These instructions were like a blueprint for a device that could stabilize a dying planet's atmosphere. It was proof that the aliens still hoped someone would understand them. The message was not begging for everything to be done for them. They were asking for partnership. Elena immediately called Dr. Morales and other top scientists around the world. Within hours, a secret meeting was held online between the best minds on Earth. They discussed the possibility that the aliens had once been far more advanced, but some disaster had forced them to send this message. If humans helped them now, maybe those aliens could one day help humanity in return. As this information leaked, a new wave of emotion spread among the people. Hope returned. People began to think that maybe this was not just a call for rescue, but the beginning of a friendship unlike anything in history. But the arguments in the United Nations continued. Some leaders shouted about money and risk. Others shouted about duty and honor. The world watched in frustration. It felt like the people were ready to move forward, but the ones in power were pulling them back. Then something unexpected happened. A group of astronauts from different countries made a public statement. They said that they were forming an independent crew. If the world's governments did not launch a mission, they would go themselves. They would use private rockets, donated technology, and crowdsourced funding. The statement shocked the world. The astronauts were heroes, trusted and respected. If they were willing to risk their lives, who could argue against them? Around this time, another powerful moment took place. A little girl in a wheelchair from Argentina posted a short video online. She said, when I was sick, strangers from another country sent medicine that saved me. They didn't know me, but they helped. The aliens are strangers too. If we can help, we should. The video went viral. People cried watching it. It reminded them that kindness was the greatest power humanity had. Slowly, the tide began to change. Some governments reluctantly agreed to join the mission. Others refused but said they would not interfere. The world was no longer united, but neither was it completely divided. A path of action had opened, not driven by fear or greed, but by something deeper. Elena stood once again in the observatory, now filled with new people and new machines. She watched as teams worked day and night, building prototypes and testing engines. She walked past a window and looked up at the sky. So many stars, so many unknown stories. In that moment, she realized something. This was no longer just about aliens. It was about humans discovering who they really were. Were they creatures of fear, clinging to their small world? Or were they something more, something stronger? Beings who could face the unknown not with weapons but with open hands. As she stood there in the dim light, she heard in her memory the fading echo of the alien message. It was a voice calling not only for help, but for understanding. An Earth, chaotic and beautiful, was just beginning to answer. The world had never seen such a moment before. News channels no longer argued about whether humanity should respond, because the decision had already been made, not by governments alone, but by the people. Across continents, scientists, engineers, astronauts, and even ordinary citizens had joined hands in a way that no one believed was possible. Factories that once built cars now produce spaceship parts. Companies that made smartphones were reprogramming satellites. People said that for the first time in history, humanity was not preparing for war against each other, but for a journey of mercy across the stars. In a massive hangar in Kazakhstan, one of the world's largest launch sites, workers moved day and night. They were not wearing the uniforms of one single country. Instead, their badges showed many flags: India, Brazil, South Africa, Germany, China, Pakistan, the United States, Nigeria, Japan, and more. There were no borders here. Everyone was focused on one goal: to build the first starship capable of reaching the alien system. Technologies that had once been considered science fiction were now being created under extreme pressure. Fusion engines, powerful enough to drive the ship between stars, were being tested. One scientist described it as putting a small sun inside an engine. Many tests failed, causing explosions or shutting the system down. But each time the engineers stood back up and fixed the problems. They were not afraid of failure. They were afraid of being too late. Cryogenic sleep chambers were developed to keep the crew alive during the long journey. At first, people doubted if humans could survive long-term stasis. But in a surprising moment, A group of volunteers from different countries stepped forward. They did not want to wait for perfect safety. They were willing to be the first to sleep in these chambers, trusting in science and in the mission. Among them was a doctor from Egypt, a pilot from Canada, a biochemist from Kenya, and a former soldier from Korea. They held a press conference, and one of them said, "If someone out there is dying, and we can save them, then I accept this risk with pride." As the engineering continued, deep beneath the Swiss Alps, an international team worked in a secret laboratory on something even more important: how to understand and speak with the alien species once contact was made. Linguists listened to the alien transmission over and over again, breaking down every pattern of sound. They discovered that the aliens had used mathematical relationships to express emotion. For example, rising tones explained fear, while descending tones represented peace. It was not a language made of words, but of logic and feeling combined. Elena had become one of the main figures of the mission. Even though she never wanted fame, people began to see her as the heart of the project. Every day she moved across different facilities, checking data, encouraging tired workers, answering questions from the crew. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes her eyes were full of tears. But she never stopped working. She knew every second mattered. Outside the scientific world, the people of Earth made preparations too. School children wrote messages and drew pictures that would be placed on the ship's databanks. They drew humans and aliens holding hands, standing under the same stars. People recorded voice messages in every language saying, "You are not alone. We are coming. We hear your call." These messages were not for human ears. They were a promise to beings light years away. There were still those who did not support the mission. A group of politicians from several powerful nations continued to say the mission was foolish. They claimed that humans should not interfere with other civilizations, or that it was a trap. They tried to stop funding, but each time they tried, public protests erupted outside their offices. People stood in rain and sun, chanting, "Send the ship." For once, the voices of ordinary people were louder than the voices of power. Meanwhile, disaster hit one of the early test ships. A prototype craft, unmanned, was launched to test the fusion engine. Minutes after liftoff, the engine failed, creating a fireball in the sky. The world watched in horror. The flames were seen miles away. Some critics said the mission was doomed, that humans were not ready for this kind of travel. But instead of giving up, the scientists gathered the broken pieces of the ship and began again. "Every failure teaches us what the universe already knows," Elena said quietly. "Survival is not given. It is earned." Months passed. Progress accelerated. Robotics experts created drones that could repair damage in deep space. Doctors developed medical nanobots that could heal injuries during the mission. Engineers designed artificial gravity systems to protect the crew's bones. It felt as if humanity had suddenly jumped forward 100 years in one season, all because of a single alien message. In a remote laboratory in Siberia, another breakthrough occurred, this time from a team working on quantum communication. They believed they had found a way to send messages faster than light using quantum entanglement. If successful, it would allow humans to speak to the alien survivors even while the ship was still traveling. It would turn the mission from a gamble into a dialogue. On the night the first test succeeded, scientists cried and hugged each other. They immediately sent a simple message toward the alien system: "We heard you. We are coming." No one knew if it would be received, but sending it felt like lighting a candle in darkness. Finally, after endless trials and sleepless nights, the starship was ready. It stood taller than any building, shining silver like a blade cutting the sky. It was called the Hope of Earth. Inside it were the most advanced systems ever created by humanity. It was not a ship of war. It had no weapons. Instead, it carried food, medicine, water purification systems, atmospheric stabilizers, and thousands of seeds. Everything needed to bring life back to a dying world. The crew, 200 brave volunteers, walked toward the ship wearing light silver suits. Some were old, some were young. Their eyes were filled with determination. They had said goodbye to their families, knowing they might never return. The launch pad was surrounded by people. Not soldiers, not politicians, but families, artists, farmers, teachers. Humanity had come to witness its own turning point. As the countdown began, the world held its breath. Every television screen, every mobile phone, every radio station was tuned in. In villages without electricity, people gathered around battery-powered radios. In big cities, highways were silent as drivers stopped their cars to listen. And 9, 8. Elena stood beside the control station, her hands clasped. She whispered a simple prayer, not to any god in particular, but to the universe itself. Please let us be worthy. 3, 2, 1. The engines ignited, not with a loud explosion, but with a deep, endless hum like the heartbeat of a star. Light burst beneath the ship. Slowly it rose. People all across Earth began to cheer and cry. Some dropped to their knees. Some lifted their hands to the sky. The ship climbed higher and higher, leaving behind blue skies, clouds, and eventually Earth itself. It passed the moon in hours, Mars in days. Humanity watched with wonder as the ship activated its fusion drive, creating a streak of light unlike anything seen before. But this was only the beginning. There were still many unknown dangers ahead. Asteroid fields, cosmic radiation, deep space anomalies. The crew would spend most of the journey in cryogenic sleep, their lives dependent on machines. If even one system failed, they might never wake again. Yet despite the danger, there was no fear, only a deep, powerful feeling of purpose. Humanity had answered the call. They were no longer just a species that looked up at the stars in curiosity. They were now protectors of life across the universe. As the starship disappeared into the darkness, leaving only a silver trail behind, a quiet realization spread across Earth. The mission was not just about saving aliens. It was about proving that life was worth fighting for no matter where it existed. It was about showing that in a universe full of silence and cold stars, there was one planet where compassion still burned brighter than fear. And on that day, humanity took its first true step not as citizens of one world, but as guardians of many. The moment the rescue ship entered the alien star system, everyone on board felt a strange silence in their hearts. The stars outside looked colder. The light here was dim, as if the sun of this system itself had grown weak from sadness. The sensors showed that the planets in this system had once been rich with water and life. Now most of them were dead. Oceans had boiled away. Skies had burned. Some planets were shattered in half as if torn by invisible hands. The alien catastrophe was not slow or gentle. It had been violent, sudden, merciless. The human crew slowly woke from their cryogenic sleep chambers. Their bodies were stiff, their eyes heavy, but their hearts were strong. They looked out through the viewing windows and saw the ruins of a civilization that had once dreamed under these stars. A quiet voice came through the ship's communication system, reporting in a trembling tone that they had detected faint life signs on the fourth planet, a planet where the signal had originated. It was not entirely dead. Something still survived there, weak, flickering, but alive. The crew prepared to descend. What they saw as they approached the planet took their breath away. It was a world scarred beyond understanding. Giant canyons cut across continents like old wounds. Storms of ash and black lightning rolled across the sky. Rivers were dry. Cities once filled with intelligent life were now silent skeletons of metal and broken towers. Even the air seemed tired. But then the scanners detected something below the surface. A massive underground structure, still powered, still alive with faint energy. This was it. The last shelter. The place where the last survivors of an entire species were waiting. Perhaps for rescue, perhaps for death. The landing was difficult. The wind screamed and the ground shook. But humans were used to danger. They had faced earthquakes, hurricanes, wars, and deadly diseases on their own planet. Earth was a hard teacher. It had taught them how to survive, how to adapt, how to stand firm even when the world tried to crush them. They were ready. The landing ramp opened, and the rescue team stepped out wearing protective suits. The silence outside was complete. No birds, no wind, no sound of life, only the distant rumble of dying storms. The team walked toward the underground entrance, guided by sensors. The ground cracked beneath their boots, and in the distance a tower collapsed, sending black dust into the sky like the last breath of a dying world. They reached a massive metallic door that was half buried in debris. It looked ancient and broken. The humans used their machines to clear the debris and activate the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a long, aching groan, the door slid open. Inside, the air was cool and still. Blue lights flickered on the walls. The humans walked down a long corridor, their footsteps echoing. At the end of the corridor, they entered a vast chamber and gasped. There, lying in rows of transparent pods, were the aliens. They were not monstrous. They were not terrifying. They were fragile. Their bodies were thin and pale, their eyes closed. Their faces were peaceful, but their skin was dull as if life was slipping away. Some pods were already empty, with nothing inside but dust. The remaining ones pulsed faintly, showing weak signs of heartbeat. The humans felt a deep sorrow in their hearts. These were not invaders or conquerors. They were victims. Suddenly, one of the alien pods made a shaky sound. The alien inside slowly opened its eyes. Its gaze met the human standing beside the pod. There was no fear in its eyes, only confusion and exhaustion. The human slowly raised their hand against the glass, a universal gesture of peace. After a moment, the alien weakly lifted its hand and touched the glass from the other side. This moment changed everything. The rescue team immediately set to work. They set up life support systems, connected medical equipment, and began transferring the aliens from dying pods into stable ones. The human doctors and scientists communicated using mathematical pulses and gentle sounds, showing the aliens that they came in peace. At first, the aliens were too weak to understand. But as hours passed, their strength slowly returned. Using translators built from the alien language, humans began to hear their story. The disaster had not been natural. It had been caused by something they had discovered, a source of power beyond understanding, buried deep beneath their world. They tried to use it to advance their civilization, but it was unstable. It tore their world apart. Cities crumbled. Atmospheres ignited. Their people died in billions. The survivors sent their final cry into space, knowing that no one might hear it. But they sent it anyway, holding on to a single drop of hope among an ocean of despair. They never expected an answer. As the humans listened, their hearts burned with determination. They set up atmospheric filters above ground. They planted bioseeds designed to grow in harsh environments. They released nanobots to rebuild damaged air systems. Every hour, they fixed something. Every day, the planet showed a faint sign of healing. The black storms weakened. The ash began to settle. The aliens, once too weak to move, began to sit up in their pods. They could not speak human words, but they used their language of tones to express their feelings. The humans learned to understand. One alien touched Elena's hand and released a tone that meant, "Why? Why would you come for us when we are nothing to you?" Elena answered softly, "Because we know what it means to suffer. Because life is precious, no matter where it comes from." The alien made a tone that meant gratitude, but behind it was disbelief. They had always thought of the universe as cold, empty, heartless. But humanity, born from a harsh and dangerous world, had come not as conquerors but as guardians. While the surface of the planet slowly began to recover, the humans found something deeper underground, a chamber containing the source of the disaster. It was still active, still unstable. If it was not shut down, it could destroy what little remained of the planet. The humans were faced with a terrible choice. Shutting it down could trigger an explosion that might kill them all. But doing nothing would mean the end of the aliens and the world. Some crew members volunteered to go inside the core chamber. They knew what this meant. They might not return. But they did not hesitate. Earth had taught them to fight for life. They entered the chamber, their suits glowing in the strange light that filled the air. The energy pulsed like a heartbeat, wild and broken. Working together in silence, the humans used machines to stabilize the core. It fought back, sending violent shocks through the chamber. Systems short-circuited. One human was thrown against a wall and almost died, but the others kept going. Sweat dripped down their faces. Their muscles shook. Their hearts pounded. At the final moment, the energy flared. It felt like the end. But then the core slowly calmed. The lights dimmed. The heartbeat of destruction finally stopped. The humans fell to their knees, not from fear, but from relief. When they returned to the aliens, the survivors made a new sound, a sound never heard before. It was a mixture of sorrow and joy, of grief and hope. It was a song. The song echoed through the underground halls, vibrating the air. Some humans cried when they heard it. They did not understand every note, but they understood the meaning. Life had been saved. The call had been answered. As the ship prepared to leave, the aliens stood together, still weak but alive. They touched their foreheads to the glass panels in a gesture of respect. A final message was exchanged. The aliens sang a sequence that meant, "Your world must be strong to create people like you. You are from the Deathworld where life fights every day. and because of that you have become the protectors of all life." The humans replied with a simple tone: unity, friendship, promise. As the engines of the ship powered on, preparing to return to Earth, the alien survivors stood under the healing light of their rising sun. That sun had seen the fall of their world. Now it would witness its rebirth, and humanity, forged by the trials of its own ruthless planet, had proven that strength does not come from power or weapons. It comes from compassion, courage, and the will to protect life, no matter where it is found in the vast, silent universe. When the human ship finally left the alien world, the stars looked brighter than before. The planet that had once been covered in storms was now calmer, its sky beginning to clear. The crew looked out through the observation windows, watching as the surface below slowly healed. They could see patches of green beginning to grow where nothing had lived for centuries. It was proof that hope could survive even in a place of ruin. The humans had done what they came to do. They had answered the cry for help, and in doing so, they had changed two civilizations forever. On board the ship, the crew sat together in the common hall, silent for a long time. Some stared at the screen showing the alien survivors waving from the planet's surface. Others wiped away quiet tears. Elena sat near the window, still wearing her faded mission uniform. She was exhausted, her hair messy, her voice almost gone from days of talking and planning. But inside she felt something deeper than pride. It was peace. For the first time since hearing that signal years ago, she could breathe without fear or guilt. They had saved lives, real lives, and maybe in a strange way they had saved themselves too. The return journey to Earth was long. During the flight, the humans sent continuous reports back home using the quantum communication system. The first message they sent caused an explosion of emotion across the planet. The mission succeeded. Survivors found. Planet recovering. Within hours, the whole world was celebrating. Cities lit up their buildings in blue and white, the colors of the mission. People filled the streets with songs and fireworks. Children held up drawings of spaceships and aliens smiling together. For once, the world wasn't divided by flags or languages. It was united by pride in what humanity had done. In homes everywhere, families stayed up late watching the news. For weeks, every story was about the mission. The footage of the aliens, their fragile bodies, their gentle eyes moved billions of hearts. People began to speak about them not as the aliens, but as our friends. Artists painted them, musicians wrote songs about the rescue, and schools added the mission to history lessons. Humanity had faced the unknown and chosen compassion over fear. It was something no one had expected, yet everyone desperately needed to believe. When the ship finally reached Earth's orbit months later, it was welcomed like a hero returning from battle. Every nation sent ships to greet it. The moment the crew stepped onto the ground, the world erupted with cheers. But the astronauts didn't see themselves as heroes. When reporters surrounded them asking how it felt to save another world, Elena simply said, "We didn't save them. We just did what anyone would do, what we should do." Her words were broadcast everywhere, simple and honest. People repeated them like a prayer. Soon after, the first official message arrived from the alien survivors, transmitted through the quantum link. Their language was still difficult, but the translation was clear enough to bring tears to everyone's eyes. "We live because of you. We will remember Earth as the world that heard our cry." The message continued, describing how they were rebuilding, planting again, and teaching their children the story of the Deathworlders who came to help them. That was what they called humans now, the Deathworlders. But it was not meant as an insult. It was said with awe. In their language, it meant those who rise from pain. As time passed, both civilizations began to exchange knowledge. The aliens shared their science, their music, and their history. They taught humans how to grow plants that could survive harsh conditions, how to build cleaner energy systems, and how to heal damaged ecosystems. In return, humans shared their own strengths, how to adapt, how to invent, how to endure. Together they built a new understanding, not of superiority, but of partnership. For the first time, humanity truly saw itself through another species' eyes. The aliens were amazed at the human spirit, the way humans laughed even in sadness, the way they built art out of chaos, and the way they refused to stop fighting for life, even when everything seemed lost. They learned about Earth's past, the wars, the disasters, the mistakes, and were stunned that humanity had survived so much. One alien scientist said in a broadcast, "Your planet is cruel, your storms fierce, your history full of suffering. But that is why you are strong. You were born in a world that tests life every day. You turned pain into power. Those words spread through human society like fire. People began to think differently about themselves. They realized that all the things they had once been ashamed of, their scars, their history, their struggles, were also the things that made them capable of greatness. For centuries, humans had feared that their violence and chaos made them less worthy of reaching the stars. Now they saw that it was exactly those hardships that had made them ready. Meanwhile, on the alien world, the survivors built a great memorial. It stood in the center of their reborn city, a tall crystal tower shining under the light of their repaired sun. On its surface, they carved a message in both languages. To the people of Earth, who came from a world of storms and fire, and brought us the gift of life. Every year after that, the aliens celebrated the Day of the Call, a festival where they sang songs of survival and hope, and sent a signal toward Earth as a greeting. It was no longer a cry for help, it was a song of friendship. On Earth, people did the same. Every year on the anniversary of the signal's discovery, the world went quiet for 1 minute. Radio stations, satellites, and communication towers all stopped broadcasting. For that single minute, the planet went silent, not in fear, but in remembrance. After that minute, humanity sent one message into space in every language from every transmitter. We are here. We will listen. It became a tradition, a symbol of unity. Elena spent the rest of her life teaching and guiding others. She never called herself a hero. She said that the real heroes were the countless people who worked behind the scenes. The engineers, the scientists, the children who drew pictures, the families who donated money, and the strangers who believed in the mission when no one else did. When asked why she thought humans chose to respond, she said, because deep down, even after everything, we still want to believe that we are good. Years later, a new generation of explorers prepared to launch into space again. This time they were not going on a rescue mission, but on a journey of discovery. They carried messages from both humans and aliens, hoping to find others who might be lost or alone. The ship's hull bore a simple engraving, "Born of a death world, guardians of life." It was a phrase that had come to define humanity's new identity. The idea of Deathworlders spread across cultures and languages. People began to use it not just for Earth, but for themselves. It became a symbol of pride, not fear, a reminder that even those born in hardship can become protectors, not destroyers. Humanity had once seen the stars as distant, unreachable. Now they saw them as neighbors waiting to be met. The alliance between Earth and the alien world changed everything. Science advanced faster than ever. Diseases were cured. Hunger decreased. Pollution lessened. It was as if helping another world had reminded humans how to help their own. There were still problems, there would always be, but now people faced them with new courage. The phrase Deathworlder spirit became common, a way to describe the unstoppable human will to survive and to protect. Years turned into decades. The alien civilization flourished once again, their skies blue and their oceans deep, and somewhere in that distant world, alien children looked up at their night sky, pointing to a small star far away. That's Earth, their teachers told them. That is where the ones who saved us come from. And on Earth, human children did the same, pointing toward that alien sun and saying, "That's the world we saved." Even after Elena was gone, her words lived on. Her recordings were played in schools, museums, and space academies. In one of her final messages, she said softly, "When we heard that call for help, we didn't know what waited for us. We were afraid, but we went anyway. And that's what makes us human. Not the way we look, not the planet we're from, but the way we refuse to turn away from suffering." In the centuries that followed, more signals were heard across the galaxy. Some were greetings, some were warnings, some were just music drifting through space. But no matter what they were, humanity listened. The lesson from that first call never faded. The universe was not empty. It was full of voices, and humanity had learned to answer them with compassion, not fear. And somewhere, under the same stars that once carried a cry for help, both species thrived. One born from a world of fire and struggle, the other from a world of light and loss. Together, they proved that no world is truly alone, that even the harshest planet can give birth to kindness, and that life, no matter how fragile, always finds a way to rise again. In the end, humanity's name across the stars was not remembered for war or conquest, but for something far greater. For being the children of a fierce world who learned to turn their strength into mercy. The universe began to call them not just Deathworlders, but something new, the bringers of hope.